Welcome to the 2026-27 New Coordinator June webinar training from the California Department of Education. This is a high-level training, and it's designed to support you in your coordinator role by sharing some key resources, some guidance, and hopefully some ideas for best practices to help you in your role. That said, my name is Paul Valencia, and I'll be your producer for today. Today's webinar, we're going to focus on managing users. But before we get started, let's go ahead and cover a few housekeeping items. First up, all participants are muted. So if you have any questions, please don't use the chat. We do have a Q&A feature in Zoom, and we'll be monitoring the Q&A feature. So please ask away. Next up, we did send out an email that had a link to the resource guide and a PowerPoint for attendees. My apologies if you were unable to open it yesterday because the file was a little bit large, but we did compress it. So you should be able to access it. And I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in the chat so you can go ahead and have access to that. And just keep in mind that you cannot make edits into that file. So what you'll have to do is download it and save it to your Google Drive in order to make edits. Also, today's session, like all of them, are recorded, and this recording will be posted on the upcoming and on-demand training webpage on the CAASPP and ELPAC website. Give us about a week or two. We have to make it accessible and do video edits and what have you. All righty, that said, I am so pleased to announce we have a new trainer who's joining us today. They're both expert panelists, and they're both from Los Angeles County Office of Education. And our newest member is Sarah Nitsos. So please welcome Sarah to the new coordinator training webinar series. And we have her colleague, Stephen Bartlett from Los Angeles County Office of Ed as well. That's it. It's all yours, Sarah and Steve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. As Paul said, it's my first day. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. Let's start with our agenda. So today our agenda really aligns with our success criteria for the webinar. First, we're going to go over the roles and responsibilities within the LEA, how to assign those roles, go over security requirements, take a look at SIRS rosters, talk about interim assessment previews, and get to answers for some of your questions. So let's begin. Oh, sorry about that. Let's begin. We're going to talk about understanding the different roles and responsibility within the system. Starting with TOMS. TOMS stands for the Test Operation Management System. It is required for anyone completing any of the testing tasks to have access to this resource. There's some basics. Users must be assigned a role. Every single person in the organization who's going to be accessing TOMS needs to be assigned by the LEA coordinator. We're going to get to that in a minute. The roles will determine system permission and access. Let's talk a little bit about oversight, and then we're going to drill into each of the roles. Overseeing both CAASPP and ELPAC, the superintendent role, the LEA coordinator role, and the site coordinator role. There are testing roles for CAASPP and ELPAC. Under CAASPP, there's a test administrator and a test examiner. For ELPAC, there's just the test examiner. Then there are some ELPAC specific roles. We have the scoring, the local scoring tool, the LST, and we have the data entry interface, or the DEI. Then there are some shared roles that go both for CAASPP and ELPAC. There's the interim assessment administrator only role. There's the educator district role, educator site role, educator roster role, and tools for teachers only. It's important to note that all of these roles are controlled through TOMS, and those TOMS roles also control access to SIRS. So role assignment determines which users can see and do what. You can go ahead and see that TOMS user's guide for the role and access details, and we're actually going to dig into it in a little bit. You have a lot of information on that resource guide that Paul gave you, but we're going to go role by role. So if you didn't understand anything I just said, don't worry, we got you. Let's get started. The superintendent role. The superintendent role is automatically assigned. It was automatically assigned April 1st of this year. It is assigned based on the California School Directory. They are responsible for assigning the LEA coordinator roles. Whoever they put in first into the system becomes the primary role for CAASPP and the primary role for ELPAC. So whoever's name is entered first is the primary. Only the superintendent or the primary LEA coordinator can create additional LEA coordinator roles. If the superintendent has not created an LEA coordinator, then the primary role is given to the superintendent. So please remember, the superintendent cannot assign any other roles. They can only assign LEA coordinator roles. The LEA coordinator will then create all of the additional roles. This is really important when it comes to small districts where the superintendent might have a lot of hats and they might have a lot of email. They might have missed the one telling them to assign those coordinators. They have the absolute highest level of permission. They can view and see everything. They have access to all student data, both in TOMS and in SIRS. But let's talk about the LEA coordinator role, because for the most part, the people in this room will probably be the LEA coordinators. The LEA coordinator is responsible for following all state laws and regulations. They're also responsible for making sure everyone else follows state laws and regulations. The LEA coordinator has got to stay up to date with all of the assessment changes. Look to your local COE for somebody who might be able to support you with that. As the LEA coordinator, you are responsible for maintaining test security. As a matter of fact, at the end of each year, you have to sign an affidavit stating that things have been securely stored and destroyed in a proper manner. So you are the key holder for test security. The LEA coordinator also communicates expectations to all of the site coordinators. The LEA coordinator also manages and assigns the roles. So that LEA coordinator makes other LEA coordinators. Keep in mind, though, that only the primary can make those other coordinators. They're also responsible for training and supporting all of the staff, making sure that you guide site coordinators from planning all the way through to reporting. Also responsible for supporting in-person and remote testing. This means managing the logistics, preparing and overseeing technology. Sometimes that secure browser needs an update, and you need to be the one helping making sure that takes place. The LEA coordinator works with data and reporting. They will have access to all the LEA reports, and they need to understand how to accurately report those results and when those results can be reported. They are also the main contact with our LEA success agents, who are the most magical people on the planet. They can solve almost every issue you will have as an LEA coordinator. It is really important that you designate your site coordinator to manage that school level testing and that site level control. So with that, let's talk about those site level coordinators. The LEA coordinator needs to help identify the site coordinator for each and every school. Collaborate with the site leadership to determine who that best person is, and then keep a list of all of those people. I recommend creating an email group so that you can automatically email all of those people at once. Provide all of the training to your site coordinators on all of the systems within TOMS. They need to be the ones responsible for training their staff, so it's important they know all of that information. Each site must have at least one site coordinator. They need to partner with the LEA coordinator on all testing procedures. They provide training, as I said, at that site level. They have the highest permissions level of their site. They don't have access to the entire LEA, but they do have access to the entire site. So it's important to keep in mind the FERPA laws so that we're not improperly exposing student data and information. Because they have the highest level of access, they also have that highest level of access in SIRS. So make sure that you really carefully analyze who this person is, because you can have a couple of site coordinators if needed. They also have some unique abilities in TOMS. They can add and manage users, such as teachers and staff. I'll show you how to do that in a bit. They can upload accessibility resources, and they can perform additional system functions. At my site, we had a very small district, so we weren't able to kind of pick and choose who our site coordinators were. It was defaulted to principals, and in the case of our middle and high school, it was the assistant principal. But every year we had a conversation as to who that best person was. And one year it was a TOSA. So make sure you have that conversation as early in the year as possible with all of your site administrators at a cabinet level meeting or whatever meeting you have to start, and figure out who that person is. Because let's go on to the next role, which is the test administrators and examiners. Let's start with CAASPP. We have the test administrator, or the TA. If you're taking notes, now's the time to write this down. The TA, or test administrator, administers the general assessments, so the science, the ELA, and the math. The test examiner, or the TE, administers both the general assessments and the California alternative assessment. So the TE is both, the TA is general. This is important to know because you want to set those TEs up early. The California Alternative Assessment for Science, the window opens in September, and it's really recommended that your special education children who are taking that assessment are taking it as soon as that content has been delivered. You don't want them to have to wait to the end of the year. So you want to be giving that assessment throughout the year. And the only way for that to happen is to have your TEs set up early. Under Ed Code, a test administrator can be the LEA or NPS, non-public school, employee or contractor. This can include instructional aides or even student teachers, but they must have a signed security affidavit, and they must be trained to administer the CAASPP. The test examiner. The test examiner is slightly different. They need to be an LEA or NPS credentialed or licensed employee. Instead of you being the one training them or the site coordinator training them, they need to complete the annual Moodle training. This is done through the Moodle portal. You'll be given a code and they will be given a key to access their course. They also need to be the ones most familiar with that student's communication style. They need to understand that student's answers to help support them through the testing process within the guidance. So staff administering both the California Alternative Assessment and the General Assessment will be TEs. All right, let's move on to ELPAC because things switch, but not a lot. So don't worry, we got you. For ELPAC, there is only one key role. It is the TE. The key distinction is this role administers both the ELPAC and the alternative ELPAC. There's not a separate role needed, so there's only that one role. The requirements for this person is that it's the LEA or non-public school employer or contractor contracted with the LEA. Contracted is the key term here. They need to be trained to administer the summative ELPAC in Moodle. Just like with the TE for CAASPP, they need to complete Moodle for the ELPAC. They also need to be proficient in English, both pronunciation, fluency, and intonation. They are assigned by the site coordinator or the LEA coordinator. They're responsible for administering all of the ELPACs, the initial, the summative, and the alternative. They maintain test security. They will also have to enter scores into the test administration, the THSS, and the DEI. They also can print interim assessment results, the SSRs, and they can administer interim assessments. They also can access completion reports in TOMS and access SIRS for the rostered student groups. Stephen will talk to you later about the rostered student groups. It's important to note that for the alternative ELPAC, the examiner really needs to know that student's communication style because they're going to be the ones determining whether or not that answer was correctly stated. There we go. Let's talk about the next role. Interim assessment administrator only role and the tools for teacher roles. So we have some other roles that you can give people in TOMS. One of them is the interim assessment administrator only. They only have access to those interims. They can score using the hand scoring system, and they have access to interim results in SIRS for those rostered students. They do not have access to the summative assessment. We'll talk about that in a minute. There's also the Tools for Teachers only role. That means they can only access Tools for Teachers. They don't have TOMs, they don't have interims, and they don't have SIRS. This is really supportive of people who might be using it for teaching and instruction in the classroom. Teachers can also self-sign up for Tools for Teachers using their LEA email. There's a hierarchy of all of these roles that give permission to different things. We're now talking about the lowest tier. So if you have Tools for Teacher, you don't have SIRS. If you have LEA Coordinator, you have everything down the list all the way to Tools for Teachers. It's important to note that users with an LEA, oh, I already said that. It's important to note that interim assessment only role might be a really good idea. That way people don't have access to that summative assessment role until you have trained them or until you have received confirmation that training has been completed. It's a great role that gives them access to do all of the interims they need. They can get access to SIRS, Tools for Teachers, but they cannot access that summative if that's the kind of a gate you'd like to set up. Let's talk about some of the other roles. These roles are really about SIRS. So there's an educator district role, which will give them access to all LEA assessment results in SIRS. Now, if they're already a site coordinator, they have it for their site. If they're an LEA coordinator, they have it for their whole LEA. But this is a role that could be valuable to assign to someone. There's a site educator site role. Again, it gives you access to SIRS site data. And there's an educator roster role that allows them to access rostered students. They cannot administer assessments, they cannot administer interims, and they don't have access to the DFAs, the directions for administration. Educator roles do not necessarily have to be teachers. These are assigned based on data need access, not teaching role. But avoid giving district-wide access to a single teacher. Remember FERPA, it's important we're not exposing that PII. This is best for staffing needs where they might need access to data without any testing results. Sorry, without any testing duties. So this might be maybe an intervention teacher who needs to see how the students are doing and progressing on interims so they can make adjustments to their instruction. Let's take a little demonstration of the roles and responsibilities guide that's available to you in TOMS. Let me drag this over for you all to see. In the guide you received, there is a link that will take you to this website. This website goes over all of those roles I just explained to you. This top table right here goes over all of the system responsibilities and abilities, everything they are able to do in order to make this role work. If you scroll down just a little ways, my favorite part is this part right here, Table 2, the access of system permissions. What can they do? What can't they do? The top is very narrative in nature and it kind of goes through each role. It's great to screenshot. Here's the role you've been given. Here are the parameters. But I like this one because it kind of shows me at a moment's glance who has access to which system, so I can make sure I align my expectations appropriately. All right. Let's talk about setting up users in TOMS. So now that we've gone over all of those different roles and permissions, now we're going to talk about the annual process of setting up everybody in TOMS. As the LEA coordinator, you have a couple of options of how you want to set up these users. You can have the site coordinator add them at their sites, or you can add all of them. As the LEA coordinator, you would first assign the site coordinators, but then you need to assign all of your test examiners for ELPAC and CAASPP, and then your test administrators, or any of the other roles we just discussed. Let's look at how we load them in. You can do them one at a time or as a whole group. So I'm now going to demonstrate how you do that as a whole group. Let me drag this window back over for you. There we go. So you're going to go to the home page and log
Sarah,
in. Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Yeah, if you would like to demo that, you'll need to recapture screen sharing.
Oh, did I lose screen sharing?
I believe I had taken over screen sharing at slide 13.
Oh, okay. Well, why don't you go ahead if you're ready?
Absolutely. Yes, that's great. Okay, so what we're talking about is roles in the user guide, and how to identify the different user levels. Excuse me. We talked about that. Sarah said that, and so we're going to look at how to view the uploads in Toms. So here we are. We're going to look at Toms. So first step is going to be logging in. Log into Toms. I'm going to log in to this test website so that I'm not exposing any personally identifiable information in a webinar like this. You'll be working with your LEA and your staff. Presumably everybody is in the same district and available to see the same material. I'm going to go to the cast side of the house. And we're going to view the existing users. First, we're going to look at those LEA coordinators. And the LEA coordinators here, you can click a link to find the LEA coordinators right here on the front page on this landing page, on this home page. And that'll bring up a Excel spreadsheet that lists those LEA coordinators. Those don't actually show up on the reports like the others, but the other place to find the users list is in this reports area. And in reports, we're going to pull up those users and see who has a current list of users here in the LEA reports. Here's this CAASPP LEA user list report. I'm going to choose this current administration year. Notice I logged in to the 25-26 school year. You'll find that logging into next year, since the rollover hasn't happened yet, you won't get as much availability of anything. And in fact, you'll need to upload into that side of the house in order to find those or have users for next year. If you don't have that as a drop down, if next year is not a drop-down availability for you, you haven't been assigned the LEA coordinator role yet for next year. And so you're going to want to make sure that that is assigned to you. I'm going to enable editing here, and notice that I can't make any alterations here in row G or in row H. I'm going to need to make alterations in row G and row H using the templated version. So I'm going to go over to users and click upload. And I'm going to download the template. And that template I'm going to save here on my desktop. It's going to be called user upload template. And then I'm going to open that file. And you're going to notice after enabling editing a pink bar that shows up potentially. And in this pink bar, it says Microsoft has blocked macros from running because the source of this file is untrusted. If you click that, it gives you some directions on how to deal with that. But essentially, you're going to save this to your same place you were saving it before. And then you're going to close it and open it back up. And that sounds really ridiculous, but that's how you're going to enable yourself on these drop-down lists to have the current year in there. If you didn't enable macros, these current years, 25, 26, 26, 27, aren't going to show up here, and you won't be able to drop down the add role option. So what you can do with that LEA user list report is you can just grab all of your current users and drop them in. This CDS code has moved over, as has the excuse me, because I pasted them. So I'm going to repaste it. The CDS code here is in this area. Notice role and organization is going to be required. So I like to use interim assessment administrator only or tools for teachers only as an initial role, and then assign the future school year when I'm looking to assign additional roles for the next year. And then I can assign those to everybody. And then I will save that. And then once I've done that, I can go to the other side of the house. I can go to 26, 27 and do an upload. I can go and upload my file. That's the essential process of uploading something from a prior year. And we'll talk more about some caveats on how you want to manage that, or how you want to make sure that that's done correctly and safely. All right. Let's talk about the timeline for adding users. Systems are set annually during the July rollover. That's generally at the very beginning of July, the first few days. All users are removed during the rollover. That means you must re-add users each year. So plan ahead for re-adding those users. You're going to save the file, just like you saw me do. Save those files and lists to streamline the setup. And you're going to work with your HR, your site staff, to get an idea of upcoming changes. So you're not going to want to re-upload somebody who is retiring next year. Like I showed you, you can pull down those prior years users lists as a basis for the coming year. But one hint on timelines: you're going to want to identify roles early for exams that test early. That means initial LPAC and CAA for science. These are both test examiner roles, and the initial LPAC window opens at the beginning of July, and the CAA for science window opens in September. So early window opening, and so that means you're going to need to get those roles in first. As I mentioned, for the rest of the TOMS roles for the year, I recommend you assign a CAASPP interim assessment IA administrator only role for interim testing. That role is going to allow interim assessments, not summative assessment, administration through during the school year. That should be an option for all of your teachers, even if you assign it only on the CAS side. It also includes the LPAC interim, so you can assign it to your ELD teachers, or anybody working with students who needs the LPAC interims on both sides of the house. That can be updated. That role can be updated to a full test administrator or test examiner role later for anybody who needs it. Getting that user role in the system, though, is a great first step. So users in an interim assessment role will also have SIRS access if they're rostered, and then planning for these items during the setup process are going to make changes easier throughout the year for you. CAASPP and LPAC roles are separate. Users may need roles in both CAASPP and in LPAC. That means that you'll create an account once in TOMS on one side of the house, and then you'll assign roles separately for each program for CAASPP or LPAC, whichever side you are adding to. You may be only one of those coordinators.Maybe you're only LEA coordinator for CAASPP or only LEA coordinator for LPAC. So if you're a site staff if you have site staff overseeing both programs, they would be assigned both a CAASPP coordinator and an LPAC coordinator role for the sites. One key point, don't create duplicate accounts. Generally, you won't be able to add a second account. And if it allows another account, you've probably added a typo into the email, or you're using an alternate email address for a staff member. So you don't want to use a Gmail address or an alternate email address for a staff member. You also don't want to have a typo in those email addresses. They'll never receive it. What you're going to do is add multiple roles to match responsibilities. So some of your users are going to need multi-site access based on their testing responsibilities. And TA and TE, test administrator, test examiner roles, they must be tied to a school. In fact, anything below a educator district or anything below a LEA coordinator has to be tied to a school. So users working at multiple sites are going to need access to each site, or they won't be able to test students enrolled at sites they are not assigned. You might have that type of scenario. Some districts will use a district level cadre of initial ELPAC testers, and those students who need the initial ELPAC will show up at maybe the district office and be tested by this group of teachers, sometimes a group of retired teachers or ELD teachers doing summer work. Those individuals will need a role at each school that they're testing students from. Okay, on to communicating about user role access. You're going to want to notify users when the TOMS account is created and prompt them to check for login emails. When you create an account, the system is going to send a no reply email with that login info to each of the email addresses that you're entering into the system. And there's some important timing details on that. Password setup link in that email expires 30 minutes after that email occurs. So we recommend giving staff a heads up to watch for that email, or you could use a staff meeting or a training meeting to get everyone in and solve all problems at once. Having that happen all at once and having everyone receive the email at once and get in the system can solve a lot of problems. If that link expires, though, users can use the forget password to resend the link to themselves. They don't need you or your assistants to reset that password, even the first time, once they have an assigned role. So they can just self-service that forgotten password to resend themselves that link.
Stephen,
But it is a little bit more confusing.
can I
Yeah,
add just a little color commentary?
yeah.
When you upload those rules, Stephen, I believe you alluded to this, make sure you send them all an email letting them know it's happening, because they'll see that email. And as Stephen said, they'll go, oh, it's been more than 30 minutes. And there'll be a moment of panic rather than going straight to that forgot password. On the flip side, we have people calling us all the time going, I keep hitting forget password, but I don't get an email. It's because that new role hasn't been set up yet. Thanks, Stephen.
Oh, yeah. Both sides of that equation. Once they're in the system, they're going to end up having those passwords expire every 90 days. That'll happen to you too, so you'll have to reset your password always at the most inconvenient time, like right in the middle of winter break or something. All right, test security. Test security. As an LEA or a site coordinator, you have to sign two documents. You sign a security agreement and you sign an affidavit, as does the site coordinator. And that's completed in TOMS at first login. Test administrators and test examiners must sign the security affidavit. That means they must log into TOMS at least once before testing. That's TOMS, not the test administration system. So a critical reminder is no TOMS login, no summative test access. So if they're seeing only interims in the testing system, that's a sure sign that their affidavit isn't signed. Therefore, you're going to want to manage that action by your users. Ensure that all of your test administrators, test examiners log in before testing begins. And then other staff, those without a TOMS role, for example, aides, custodians, proctors, anybody's going to be in the room during a testing session. That's why custodians are included in that list. Sometimes they will go through. They must sign a non-TOM security affidavit. That form is available on the CAASPP website, and you can find a link to that in the resource guide. All right, so let's ensure all the people with Tom's Access have completed their security forms. And what do you do in order to do that? And here is another report. Oops, I'm in next year. Actually, I'm going to go in last year because I don't believe that any of these have been set up yet. Um, and I'm going to find the report that's going to show my signed security forms. That's right here. And I'm going to request that. I'll bring it up on that request reports page as a spreadsheet. And that'll give me a status on every one of my individuals who has, oops, I think I clicked the one that has the certificates. Well, I'll go through the other one in a moment. This is the certificate side of the downloads, and that gives you a actual affidavit that was signed by that individual that is associated with your district. The problem with that is it doesn't give you an unsigned information, any information on who hasn't signed. And so that one's called the forms. The one that gives you the information on anyone who has a role but has not signed the report, that's very important for managing who still needs to sign it. That's this one right above it, the status report. That comes out as the Excel spreadsheet. And that's going to look a little bit like this. So this will give you that date the security agreement was signed. And here you see this guy, this person is the one who I need to reach out to. I've got their email right there to reach out to them and get them that reminder that they need. I did one thing about users that I failed to mention is you can not only upload users as a big batch file, but you can do that one by one. And you can do that by clicking this add button. And so if I enter Bart Simpson and Simpson underscore Bart at scoe.net, and I don't know his phone number, so I'm just going to put the school district's phone number. I can create an individual role for that one individual. One quirky thing that I have found in the past with adding individual users is that if a particular user has been their role has been revoked in the past, reactivating that will only be available through this upload rather than the add user option. So sometimes you'll have a site coordinator revoke a role of a teacher who left their school, but that teacher left their school to go to another school in your district. And so you'll hit that in that type of scenario when that role got revoked, but you need to still reestablish that for them. All right. Tom's credentials. Tom's credentials also provide access to SIRS assessment results. Tom's roles are determining SIRS access. Users must be assigned to a role in Tom's. The role, it defines what data and features are visible in SIRS. And Sarah showed you a really good diagram of those what access each role has. That's a great way to understand what's available in CERS 2, so the California Educator Reporting System. Access levels include the top level access LEA coordinator for ELPAC. And in terms of data, very similar access level for data in CERS is going to be available to a district educator role. And they have access to all students in the LEA. Site coordinators and site educators, those have site roles, and they have access to all the students, but just at their site. Test administrators, test examiners, interim assessment only roles, those are generally assigned to teachers. They're only going to have access to students that they have been assigned to them. That means it's going to require proper rostering, and they'll need you to do that extra step in order to see their own students. Common issue comes up because of that. So a teacher won't be able to see their students due to either their TOMS user role or CERS rostering. And they'll need to get in there in order to see the status of their students. There's additional support for CERS. There is a great series on advanced rostering. There's some training on advanced rostering. There's one that's called CERS Beyond the Basics Module 1, and that is available on the CAASPP YouTube site. There's a link to that in the resource guide. All right, there's some other great CERS trainings linked to for you in your user guides to get you started. It's important to ensure that appropriate staff have access to assessment results. If you need more detailed and procedural guidance, you can refer to that CERS, California Educator Reporting System User Guide. There are 3 key rostering functions, and not all LEAs have access to all 3. First is SIS to CERS integration. That's going to be the one that not everyone has access to. Depends on your SIS, student information system. The CERS to SIS integration will transfer student groups from your student information system to CERS. And you're going to see your vendor integration webpage on the CAASPP website. Look up your vendor, look up your student information system. That's SIS would be like Aries or PowerSchool or one of the others. And look up that on that website. The second rostering function is manual rostering of groups. So you can create custom groups, for example, an intervention group or an after-school group. And the third rostering function is managing student groups. And this allows you to update existing groups efficiently. And that would only be available to your role or a educator role. So available to a site LEA coordinator or an educator role. A core part of your job is going to be monitoring users. So you'll need to monitor and update TOMS user access year-round as staff changes and roles change. You're going to want to be sure to deactivate TOMS promptly when staff leave your LEA to prevent unauthorized access to student personally identifiable information, that PII. You're going to want to have a system for ensuring that new staff are immediately added to TOMS with an appropriate role based on their position and access requirements. You may feel the big push of adding users at the start of every year, but be sure you have systems in place to trigger management of users as an ongoing responsibility throughout the year. So with that, I'd like to highlight some of the materials you have available to you when you're seeking help 1, 2, 3 weeks from now. There's the adding and managing users one by one video, and then the adding and managing users by batch file video. And for reminders on which role can do what, there's the user roles overview from the TOMS user guide. Don't forget to download your coordinator checklists Don't forget to visit the Coordinator How-To Hub. Click through to the TOMS resources pages and the accessibility resources. And if you need a hand, those success agents, those brilliant success agents are always there to call or text or email to ask for a helping hand. All right. We want to talk for a moment about the use of assessment results. This year, the California School Dashboard and the statewide assessment results are both going to be released on the same day, on October 15th. But please don't wait until the October release of statewide data to use your local data. Data start becoming available in Test Operations Management System, TOMS, and the California Educator Reporting System as soon as results are validated by the CDE, starting in mid to late May. That's already passed for this year, right? Which is much sooner than the public release of data in October. So we recommend that local education agencies wait until a sufficient portion of their data has populated before beginning analysis to avoid drawing conclusions from incomplete data sets. But all data will be available in TOMS and SIRS by August, with many LEAs receiving their full data set earlier than that. In fact, we're working with a few LEAs, Sarah and I, who have maybe 98% of their data already in TOMS and SIRS. But you're encouraged, LEAs are strongly encouraged to start using your local assessment data for planning as soon as those results are available. And you can, as an LEA coordinator, access student score data files in TOMS at that reports page, just like we went to the reports page to find user roles. And you can, California educators with a TOMS account can access student level data in SIRS. The early release of local data allows you to review, and educators, other educators, review summative assessment roles far in advance of that public release, which means that your teachers, your administrators, are going to have the ability to review data to start planning prior to the close of the school year, making that data actionable. And as you begin the data review analysis earlier, you're going to want to consider sharing early insights with your leadership, with your instructional teams, hold planning and instructional discussions before the close of the school year, if you're still at that place, and leveraging local data to support students and program changes sooner. A lot of times there'll be confusion about something called an embargo, and the embargo won't show up until closer to that October 15th date. That's only on statewide data and other LEAs in the state release. You can use your own data. Homework. With that, let's go to the homework. A goal of your homework is to take action on key priorities. Homework, three things for homework. First is to find out who the test site coordinators are at your school site and district. The second is to find out who loaded users into TOMS last year. How was that done? Was it individual or was it batch upload? If you're small, it may have been done individually. If you're large, may have been done batch upload. I know I would always do an LEA coordinator upload of all the users at the beginning of the year, and then follow that up with a mandate that site coordinators would update their roles throughout the year, and that's because they knew best when changes were being made to staff and the roles that staff were playing at their schools. So individual or batch upload. Lastly, in the homework, think about the staff at your school and the level of access they'll need in the system. What role are they going to serve? Don't want to give unintentional PII access to the wrong individuals, but you need staff who can access the right information at the right time. And with that, I'd like to invite you to ask any questions and drop those into the Q&A component of your Zoom window.
One of the
We encourage you to submit some questions into there, and we'll work through those. Thank you, Sarah. Yes.
Yes, one of the things that's super handy dandy is you are able to download last year's users and review that and determine which ones stay and which ones go. So you're not always building your upload from scratch. So one question I'd like to elevate is from Ruth, and I did answer it in chat, but I think it's best for all of us for our own personal edification to hear this. So Ruth's question was, I was told that if CalPads was updated with student rosters, the rostering in Toms and SIRS would be automatic. Is that not correct? And I did answer it in chat, but Stephen, I'd like your take on this. I said, yes, CalPADS rosters do talk to TOMS for students, but they don't talk to SIRS. And as Stephen said, your SIS, your Student Information System, PowerSchool Aries, that can roster into SIRS. Anything to add to that, friend?
Well, yeah, all the information that's in SIRS comes from CalPads. It's all that information is sourced from CalPads. In terms of CalPads having uh, class lists, yes, there is I believe one of the end of year reports includes a high school rosters of who was in what class, and that you can do optionally for elementary and middle school, but I do not believe there's any use of that information, and I believe it is something that's uploaded well after it would be of any use. I believe it's uploaded in the next fiscal year, in the next school year, if I'm recalling that sequence correctly. So, yeah, there may be rostered students in CalPads, depending on your practices, only at certain grade levels. But uh, that wouldn't work for that. So SIRS rostering has to be done through your SIS and not through CalPads. I wish I
Right.
had Sean Walker here to answer that. Um, I was going to answer how are SIRS and TOM score reports different? And there are a few things. You can find the SSRs, student score reports that parents get in TOMS and download those. So that's helpful to be able to see what they see. And you could probably also see those in your SIS if you have access to that or access to the information that gets delivered to the parent portal. The data file in TOMS has additional information like special education information that is excluded from SIRS. SIRS, on the other hand, I believe is a little bit more user-friendly. It has features that might be useful for a teacher. It has some analysis features like target reports and group reports that would not be available from a single SSR and would not be available in the TOMS downloaded file. But the data, underlying data, and the underlying students would be identical.
Just looking at some questions here.
And I see we have Moses here
Yeah.
from ETS, and I'll just invite Moses to choose any if he is interested in any of these questions or um, adding some color
Oh,
commentary on any of the ones that have
yeah,
already
no,
been
no,
answered.
great job with the presentation and the answers to the questions. Victoria, yes, the answer is yes to your question. I don't know if Sarah or Stephen were going to answer that in writing, but yeah, all the data is still flowing. Some of you have shared that you're seeing 98%. You're seeing more data. We're still in the process of scoring. Keep looking because more data will continue to drop. And yes, all of it will be there before the rollover, Sarah. Or I'm sorry, Victoria.
Thank you, Moses. Yeah, one thing you want to actually do before the rollover, I know, I think we mentioned this in a prior session, is be sure to download anything from the last 3 years that's available in the system. The reason you do that is because that third year will drop off. It will disappear, and you won't have access to it. There's another difference between CSRS and TOMS. TOMS only holds 3 years of data, but if you go to uh, history for individual students, you can see ELPAC a student took 4 or 5 years ago in the SIRS side of the house. So that's a very helpful tool. Moses, maybe you can answer this. Do teachers who administer interims have access
Just
to interim scores? I believe if you,
Oh
um,
yes. So yeah, good question, Steven. I was just reading that one. So Lorena, if they administered an interim, like Sarah and Stephen mentioned early on, I think it was the very first part of the presentation, you gave them an account. You gave them a Tom's account. You probably gave them an interim assessment only account, or you might have given them one of those other ones that Sarah was talking about, a TE or a TA account that they can give interims with. So all three of those accounts gives them access to SIRS, which then gives them access to, and I'm sorry, your name, yeah, Lorena, it gives them access to that data of that for the students who they administered interim assessments to. Here, a very important point, and I know, and before I say this next thing, your presenters have said it a number of times. I cannot overemphasize this. And guys, I don't know if the link is on the resource guide or not, but I'm gonna drop the link, or is it? If it is, I'll just mention it. Did you guys put the lookup tool for the success agents? That link where they can look up their success agent?
Yeah, it's in the
Because
resource guide.
okay, uh, folks, all 47 of you that are left here with us, the amazing information that you have gotten today, especially for new coordinators on a late on a Friday, your head might be spinning. I cannot overemphasize what they have said at least a half a dozen times, and that Paul just mentioned. In your resource guide, there is a link that's going to be a lifesaver for you. And let me tell you a secret. These next 2.5 weeks before July are the most wonderful weeks to call your success agent because it's now slowing down for us tremendously. They have all the time in the world to sit with you and talk through things. Somewhere in that resource guide, Paul says that there's a link that says something like Success Agent Lookup Tool. You go to that website, you type in the name of your LEA, and you're going to find the name and the telephone number and the email address of your success agents. Oh, this is the best time of the whole year to start calling your success agent and getting to know them personally. They are the kindest, most helpful, generous people with their time that you will ever find, and they will help you with every detail of all the things that you have heard here today. Like, for example, this one nuance. I know Stephen mentioned it, but you probably don't know the magnitude of this. If you give a teacher the account that Sarah said, called an interim assessment only account, that's wonderful. They can give any interim assessment. They can even log into SIRS. But boy, I hope you heard the little nuance that Stephen said because it'll drive you nuts if you don't yet know the magnitude of this little statement that Stephen said. If you give them an interim assessment only account, they can give interim assessments. They can log into SIRS. But you know what data they're going to see when they log into SIRS? Nothing. Until you remember the little secret that Stephen mentioned. IA only account, you have to create a teacher group of kids for that person that you gave an interim assessment only account. And by the way, if you're one of those that right now heard that and are saying, what? How do I do that? Okay, there's no way we can we would be terrible at to try and explain it now to you and fry your brain anymore. That's exactly what you call your success agent for.
Absolutely. That's, I think the success agents are an invaluable resource. Moses at ETS is one of our favorite resources. They go the extra 2 minutes for you. We are going to go over by that extra 2 minutes as we close out the session. We want to let you know about some of the upcoming trainings. Paul, you want to take that?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Moses, Stephen, and Sarah. What a wonderful job on your debut. So, and thank you everyone for asking those questions. And just to reiterate what Moses said, reach out to your success agents because there's some questions here that probably didn't get answered, but please reach out to them. They are willing and able, and they are so knowledgeable. So definitely want to reach out to them. Yeah, like Stephen said, we have some upcoming trainings. The new coordinator trainings, we have one next month, and that's on July 16th, and it's receiving results. And then on July 21st, we have an encore session from our May 21st webinar, which was prepping the initial alternate ELPAC. So for those ELPAC coordinators, and you missed it in May, you have a chance to get a repeat of this. And then August 27th, we have assessment systems and TOMS. And then we have the coffee sessions, our friends at ETS, and these are virtual interactive sessions hosted by ETS and CDE, and they're dedicated to providing timely updates, answering questions from LEAs, testing coordinators, administrators, educators, and what have you. And the next one is July 14th, I believe. And then we have the AIM sessions, and these are held virtually. And this is put on by CDE, and this provides coordinators with the latest updates, latest developments, and important information regarding California assessment and accountability systems. Definitely a big one. Don't want to miss that one. And you'll see a list of topics in your resource guide as well. And then what's not on the screen, but I just wanted to do a quick plug-in for the 26 in-person new coordinator fall convenings. There's a link in there for that as well. All right. And then we have the CAC. Registration is open. This is going to be in Riverside. It's going to be at the convention center there, and it's from October 27th through the 29th. And this is a phenomenal gathering. You're talking about 1,000 people, a lot of energy, a lot of great information. So if you can join us, that would be awesome. All righty, Steve. Next one. And then if you haven't already, we would love for you to sign up for the assessment spotlights. You can find subscription instructions in your resource guide. And also you can follow CDE on X at CDE Assessments, and you can connect with them on Instagram. All right, so that brings us to the end of this training, and we are so sorry we took you a little bit over. Thank you so much for hanging out with us for these couple of minutes, and I believe it was important information, but we also want to respect your time. So thank you on behalf of my colleagues, Sarah, Stephen, Moses. We thank you, and we wish you a great afternoon. And just keep in mind, you're not alone in this work. There are plenty of people out there to support you, your success agents, CDE, and other coordinators. That's it. We hope that we see you at the next webinar. All right. Take care, everyone.